Hi, I'm Jordan, and I'd like to talk about the elephant toothpaste experiment that I recently conducted, and I'd like to show you the byproducts, what exactly happened. And of course, as you can see, the experiment was successful, and I used yeast, 10% hydrogen peroxide, dish soap, and also red and blue food coloring. And I'd like to talk more about the science behind this and why exactly the reaction happened the way that it did. So, yeast contains an enzyme called catalase that breaks down hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, into oxygen gas and water. The oxygen gas gets trapped by the soap, and you get a large foamy solution that squirts out from the top of the bottle. And the cool thing about the activity / experiment is that the enzyme catalase can also be found in potatoes, dogs, and even humans. We have the same enzyme in our bodies. That is why you see the hydrogen peroxide bubble when you put a cut or scratch or scrape. The oxygen released is what kills the germs in the cut. We have this enzyme because we naturally produce low amounts of hydrogen peroxide as a byproduct of oxidative metabolism, the way that a cell gains useful energy. Our cells need energy, but low amounts of hydrogen peroxide are produced and need to be neutralized through enzymes like catalase. The foam that I made is special because each tiny foam bubble is filled with oxygen. The yeast acted as a catalyst, which means a helper, to remove the oxygen from the hydrogen peroxide. Since it did this very fast, it created lots and lots of bubbles. And my experiment created a reaction called an exothermic reaction, which means it is not only created foam in the process, but it also created heat. And the foam produced is just water, soap, and oxygen, so I can use it and clean it up with a sponge if need be. And where the water exactly came from is I made a hot water and yeast solution that I poured into the other container with hydrogen peroxide, dish soap, and food coloring. And the foam is made as the dishwashing. The soap traps tiny oxygen bubbles created by the chemical reaction that is happening inside the bottle. And the thick foam oozes out of the top of the bottle and looks like toothpaste. And when the toothpaste is being squeezed out of the bottle, hence the name. Hydrogen peroxide is a molecule made up of hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms, and it can be expressed by the chemical formula H2O2. And under the right conditions, hydrogen peroxide will go under a chemical reaction and will break into two parts in water. And we can write this decomposition reaction as a chemical equation 2H2O2 as the reactant, and the products are 2H2O plus O2. And when a chemical that is made up of only one molecule breaks into two different smaller molecules, it is called a decomposition reaction. This particular decomposition reaction is an exothermic reaction, meaning it gives off heat. If you feel the size of the bottle, the plastic or glass should feel warm. And as mentioned before, the yeast contains an enzyme called catalase, and the enzyme is called catalase because it works as a catalyst in this reaction. A catalyst is a substance that speeds up the rate of a chemical reaction without changing its products. The yeast is added to the hydrogen peroxide to speed up the reaction. The catalase in the yeast speeds up the process by breaking down the hydrogen peroxide and thus produces oxygen and water more quickly. The oxygen gets trapped by the dish washing soap as many tiny bubbles. You know the molecular structure of water, right? That's just H2O. So hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. So it has 2 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen atoms. When you add yeast to the mix, the fungi immediately aid in the decomposition of the hydrogen peroxide, stripping off that extra oxygen. The extra oxygen becomes a gas, and all of those foam bubbles that you see, while the rest is basically water again. The gas starts looking like an escape route, and voila, a foamy toothpaste gushes out of the bottle. And here's another part. The reaction also creates heat, so it is known as an exothermic reaction, and it's usually not too hot at these concentrations, but you can definitely feel the heat emanate off the foam. It's pretty neat and not too hot, so by all means, mess around with the foam and have some fun if you decide to do this experiment on your own. And that's about all I'd like to say about the experiment. Thank you for listening.